Georgia Virtue presents the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. This is episode 252. This week we have Gang Greene gets committee assignments, Schlapp and Tickle, the Georgia state budget, declining student numbers, and our highlighted bills of the week. I'm Dave Roberts. With me is my partner in endeavor, writer, journalist, just a blogger, dog mom, and owner of the GeorgiaVirtue.com, Jessica Szilagyi.
That is too many.
That's just too many? Too many hats?
Yes, too many hats. What's up?
How was your week?
It was lovely. How was your week?
Wasn't too busy. Had my first board meeting as a member of the board with Shepherd's Rest Ministries, which is a battered women's shelter. And I told you I'm kind of out of place.
Yeah.
They're all way better people than I am.
Well, that does happen sometimes when you mix boards like that.
Yeah. I mean, I can't be me in that room. No, I'm very proud to be a part of any part of that organization and do whatever I can to help them. And if anybody wants to help out, just Google Shepherd's Rest Home or Shepherd's Rest Ministry in Paulding County. They do incredible work, and it wasn't until I sat on the board that I saw how thin their budget is.
Yeah, I think those types of things always amaze people when they sit on a board for any organization, really. That's truly local like that, you know. I think it shocks people that. Yeah,
and Dr. Melton,
they do a lot.
Who runs the place, Tuesday morning rescued and this is why she's so good at what she does. She rescued a woman who has been trapped in her home. Her husband has pretty bad PTSD apparently, but he turned the house into a fortress and watches all the cameras and walks around with an AR strapped to his back, and she's petrified. And you know, anywhere she goes, you know, he limits where she can go and stuff like that. So they did a rescue on the run when she was taking the kids to school or whatever's going on last Tuesday morning, which was able to rescue her without anybody getting hurt. Obviously, the guy needs help, mm-hmm. but not at the expense of his wife and kids. But they were able to do a rescue, get her into the house and start getting everybody checked out medically and then psychologically and all that stuff, and then get a TPO. And Doc Melton's an expert at all that stuff and has all the connections to make that kind of stuff happen. It just amazes me that they do it on as little money as they do.
It's because they're, not that this was ever a question, but because they're truly passionate about what they do and committed to it, you know?
Yeah, they don't get any state funding because they have the word ministry in their name. Mm-hmm. So it is 100% charity, and if Doc Melton hadn't bought, she has two houses, a crisis house, which is a place to take women and kids right now, and then they have a transition house where it's, I want to say halfway home because women didn't do anything wrong, but it's a way for a lot of times part of abuse is not having any control of your finances. So these women leave with nothing. But it's a place where they can go and start getting a job and work on getting a car and finding a place to live and, you know, move on with life, you know, without their abuser.
Well, it's important work.
It's great work, and I'm very proud to be associated with them. I just sitting in that room, and anybody who's listened to the show has heard, you know, I have a darker sense of humor.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure those people have sense of humor too. They just don't, you know.
It's not the place for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the place for it.
Yeah.
So anyway, my Congresswoman, Marjorie Taylor Greene, got committee assignments.
Yeah, she's somebody again.
And I knew this was coming down. As soon as she endorsed McCarthy, I'm like, she made a deal.
He probably went to her early on and was like, listen, crazy pants.
Yeah, all this great stuff you want to do, you need a committee to do it. And she was the only member of Congress that if you went to visit her, you would have to be like, okay, Ms. Greene, I've got to go. Usually when you visit with a congressman on Capitol Hill, they're in and out. I mean, they're in between meetings, in between committee meetings and stuff, and they'll blow in, shake everybody's hand, say, talk to my chief of staff if you need anything. Here's my email, here's my number, and then boom, they're off to the next meeting. And she's one that she had nowhere else. She had nowhere to go. If they weren't all in the hall in the big room, there's nothing for her to do besides just sit in her office and twiddle her thumbs. So I think that finally got to her that, okay, I need to be a little less nuts.
Well, she wasn't really representing her district.
That's true. Any legislation she dropped was dead on arrival.
And now that... Do you think that part's going to change? I mean...
I don't know. I think she should probably... I know as much as you want to be able to go back to your district and say, look what the bills I signed on to. We know, especially after dealing with David Ralston, there are names that if it gets signed to a piece of legislation are dead just because the rank and file don't like that person.
Because, I mean, the problem with Marjorie Taylor Greene is that there's a lot of people who just still don't want to be associated with her because she's a lightning rod across the board,
She's kept the crazy down in the last year or so.
But sometimes it's too late in terms of the allies in the House.
Yeah, I mean, she went from being a regular on Fox News to even Fox was like, we're not touching that.
Yeah.
She's got to get herself a little more under control with stuff, and it seems like she has. Her constituents love her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she won re-election easily. It's not like her seat's in danger.
Right.
But she was appointed to the House Oversight and Accountability Committee and the Homeland Security Committee.
Yeah. Obviously, that's the second. I mean, they're both good committees, but that second one is super powerful.
Yes, it is. That's a big nod, big thank you for not pulling a Getz, and I don't necessarily think what Getz did ultimately was wrong or bad, because he got some concessions from McCarthy by holding up the proceedings.
But she was 15 rounds strong.
Yep, never wavered.
I mean, she wavered on her values by voting for him in the first place, but she didn't waver once she committed to him, that's for sure.
Well, I think she's learned that you really have two choices up there. You can be part of the sausage grinding or not.
Yeah.
At least if you get a seat at the table, you get a chance to work your values into a bill. If you're not even invited to the table, you got nothing. And a lot of times it's not whole pieces of legislation that reps do for their home districts. It's one piece inside of a larger piece. Because these bills they pass are 1,000 pages. Half of them are deals that, in order to get different reps to sign on to it and stick things in the bill.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, we can all say that's wrong, but that's the way it's done up there.
Yeah.
What's in it for me? What can I take home to my district if you want me to vote on this?
So with the Homeland Security Committee, in her statement, she said, obviously she's talking about the border and Biden. And she said, our southern border is being invaded by millions of illegal aliens, criminals, and potential terrorists. Our people are being murdered by Chinese fentanyl, flooding in from cartels. Our Border Patrol and ICE agents have their hands tied and have been turned into a welcoming committee by the Biden administration. Cyber attacks continue on our nation's people and businesses, along with many more threats to our homeland. It's time for accountability. We will investigate the Biden administration's violations of our laws and fund and defund programs to defend our border and American sovereignty. Whew. It's a lot she's taking on. We're planning on taking on.
Yeah. There's a very real risk here to Republicans. I know they want the red meat for the base, for their base. But there's a real danger of launching so many investigations that nothing else is getting done. And I don't know that that'll play well in 2 years.
Yeah. But some of them risk it because they talked about it so much that they have no choice but to follow through because they hammered it so hard.
Right. It's going to be an interesting juggling act. The Homeland Security, or it's either one of her committees would be, maybe in the Homeland Security that it would give her not her, but that committee has the authority to start proceedings against Mayorkas. Start to impeach him. Mm-hmm. The problem here is impeachment's not going to go anywhere. You're going to have to make a hell of a case to get enough senators to sign off to impeach Mayorkas.
Yeah.
Now, I think he should be gone. I mean, there's several administration people that should be gone. I think that Fauci should have been removed from office a long time before he retired. Will it happen? I don't know. Will anything actually get done? I don't know. They're going to hold these investigations, and the policy wonks out there will sit and watch the committee hearings where they're grilling Mayorkas and other people about the border, but what actual authority they're going to have, I don't know. Not much.
Did you see her statement on her oversight and accountability appointment?
No, go ahead.
So, she said, we will return the role of the Oversight Committee to investigating waste, fraud, abuse, and mismanagement of the federal government, which is exactly what the American people are fed up with. Joe Biden, be prepared. We are going to uncover every corrupt business dealing, every foreign entanglement, every abuse of power, and every check cut for the big guy. And it's not just the Biden crime family. The GOP majority will investigate every bit of government being used to abuse the American people. Every 3 and 4 letter agency will now have to answer to Republican oversight, not the rubber stamp of the Democrat rule. So, I think one of the things I hate about national politics is the way, I'm not saying that the issues that she's talking about aren't real. I'm not saying that at all, but just the way that and the narratives are framed and the partisanship. I can't stand that crap. And I think it's inappropriate when you're coming from your office, like your official office. This isn't her campaign. This is her congressional office. And I think we've made a mockery of decorum, like everybody, not just her. I'm certainly not just going after her. And I feel like, I think she thinks she has to talk like that to get attention. But if she just spoke about, like everyone hates federal agencies. Everyone has a federal agency they hate. At least one, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. Most of us hate all of them. But everyone's got at least one. So just communicate, people. Like, meet them where they are instead of sending out a flare and being hyper partisan. I just can't stand that.
Well, I'm not a big fan of theater, musical or otherwise. I'm not a big fan of holding these hearings just for the sake of getting your soundbite. And it's you bring somebody up, and depending on whether it's House or Senate, you have members or you have senators sitting up above this person, and they get 2 minutes to ask a question, and they do 1 minute 50 seconds about themselves, and then throw a question in. It's absolute political theater, and it's all about getting that sound bite. I have 2 minutes. I want to say something that is good enough to get on the news. I mean, and Ted Cruz is pretty good at it. Ron Paul is very good at it, with landing those punches. But besides the theater of it all and the pageantry, what does it accomplish?
Mm-hmm. You should be informing people as you go. I guess that's where I mean, obviously I'm a Rand Paul fan, so I'm a little bit biased, but I feel like if you listen to his elevator speeches, and his dad was the same way, you can get something out of it. Like, you learn something almost every time you listen to them talk.
His dad was in politics?
Ha. And I feel like, that's what's lost in the hyper-partisan narratives, and the red meat of this crap is...
Yes, and they all want something they take back to their district to put out with the zingers they get in. That's what I don't like about political debates now that they have on TV. It's all about getting the zinger. It's all about getting that sound bite that's going to be played over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. It's not about actual policy debate. That'd be ridiculous. But it's also our fault as a society, is that's what we want. We want the Real Housewives flipping over tables and pulling hair and stuff. That's what people want. People want Jerry Springer. And we get the government we deserve.
We do.
So we have a little Schlapp and tickle here. Walker campaign staffer lawsuit says a GOP activist groped him.
So first, I feel like we should acknowledge how dedicated this person is to the party, because they obviously waited until the election season was over to file this.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, yes, we recognize that they waited till it was over. It's also, first of all, we don't know how true this is. It's Matt Schlapp. Most people who follow national politics know who he is. He's a repeated talking head on different stations, obviously from the right side of the aisle. But the staffer says some weird stuff, man. He's looking for $9 million in damages. It accuses Schlapp of aggressively fondling the staffer's genital area.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it started off with, I guess they were sitting next to each other, and his leg was touching me. I'm like, that happens a good bit. You got a few people sitting at the bar. I mean, your legs are going to touch.
I thought it was in the car.
Was it in the car? But I was saying they were at the bar, but I'm like, that happens all the time. It's not sexual if my leg bumps up against somebody else's.
Right. The groping allegedly happened in a car ride. The other part, I mean, $9 million is a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. I don't know what to say, but I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, we're supposed to believe victims, and it seems to me that's not something that I would throw out there had it not been true, because it embarrasses him as much as anybody else. His name is not anywhere in the stories. As a victim, we protect victims.
When I was reading the article, what I was thinking was like, $9 million is a lot of money. They're probably starting. This is my thought process. $9 million is a lot of money. That's probably their jumping off point because, these types of things settle. And I was like, these types of cases often happen because people know they're going to settle. And the other side settles because it's better than going to trial and having some sort of public hearing or anything like that. And I'm like going through all this and then I'm thinking, it is a risk that somebody would make these accusations, and like if this did happen to him, it's at risk his name will probably come out at some point. It almost always does. And then if it isn't true and he gets humiliated about it at some point, but he gets $2, $3, $5 million, is that worth it? Like, I don't know. I guess people have to weigh that, whether they're actually a victim or not. I mean, they have to weigh how much is all of this worth to them. I've never understood the civil pursuit of, quote, justice in things like this.
If it was sexual assault, and which it would be by definition,
right?
Why aren't we going after him criminally?
Well, criminally, it would be he said, she said, and perhaps, I mean, we don't know. This is me speculating, but if the law enforcement agencies were any good, they would say, well, if you don't have any proof, I'm really sorry this happened to you, but there's nothing we can do. And that would be appropriate.
Maybe in Georgia, he might get that. Anywhere else in the country, or not anywhere else, but if it
happened in Georgia,
Fulton County with under Fannie Willis, you don't think Fannie would throw caution to the wind and go after Schlapp?
I don't know, because it would be the law enforcement agency, not the district attorney's office.
Right.
I mean, law enforcement, as busy as they are, they don't have time to be chasing down. They really don't. That's what's so frustrating about a lot of the cases that we talk about down here, is that they don't have time to be chasing down rabbit holes of he said, she said, when there's absolutely no evidence. Yeah,
it would be hard to find evidence of a grope, unless somebody
and it's going to be hard to find evidence enough in a civil suit for this.
Well, you don't have the same burden of proof.
You don't, but what evidence do you have at all?
And Schlapp is going to have to decide what his reputation's worth to him to just make it go away.
Well, apparently it's worth a lot because he's planning on a countersuit. The statement that his legal team said was, it's false and the Schlapp family is suffering unbearable pain and stress due to this false allegation from an anonymous individual. And the legal team is assessing countersuit options.
Well, they always say that stuff before they settle.
Oh, I know.
Well, I'll sue you back. I don't know. It's such a weird story to me. Even if it was between a male and a female, it's just it's strange to me to think in the middle of a campaign, which is a long grind, and the Walker campaign was a long grind. Same thing for Warnock, because it just went on forever. Well, less so for Warnock because he didn't have a challenger in the primary. To think that you're in a car, and then I don't know what would give anybody the green light to think that was okay. I don't know if I don't know. I don't know what would go through someone's head, even if Schlapp has those tendencies. But what would make you think that person's gonna be receptive to it?
It's very messy, I don't know. And it's very messy, and it kind of goes back to the conversation we've had about men in cars. I mean, this was male and I mean, we don't know, but it's certainly interesting. It's certainly, these types of things that continue to happen certainly make the case for having at least 3 people in every vehicle, not just, like.
Yeah. And I make jokes about that. I was going to a campaign event with a campaign secretary. She's a friend of mine. She actually listens to the show a good bit. But there was something in the back seat we needed we're doing something for a campaign event. So she was leaned over with her head all the way down in the back seat looking for something, and her butt was square up in the air. I'm like, if my wife drives by right now, I'm a dead man. It's well, not because we were riding in the car together, just the position she was in to get something out of the back seat. It's like, I'm like, I'll stop. We'll go look in the back seat. I can't have people seeing me with your butt up in the air driving around.
Right.
And there was nothing to it, and I laughed about it with my wife afterwards. Like, yeah, you'd have some explaining to do if I saw that without context. But yeah, you feel like you need it feels like it's like the doctor who has a nurse in the room to do an examination now. It feels like that's what you need. You need a third witness or run a camera or something, because you never know when the accusation's coming. And it being male on male doesn't mean the accusation has any less gravity to it.
Right.
Because Schlapp, within political circles, especially within that campaign, has power. And I guarantee you that staffer didn't have as much power as Schlapp did. And I'm sure he doesn't want his name getting out there, because the next campaign's not going to pick him up. We don't need that. So I don't know if it happened. I don't think we'll ever know how much he gets. It'll be an undisclosed amount to an undisclosed person. And who's going to win? The lawyers. The lawyers always win in a tort situation.
Sure.
Who wins in divorce? The lawyers.
Yeah, it's ugly. It's going to be bad, but...
And look, if Schlapp didn't do this, I feel for him. I really do. If he did, screw him. But no, if he didn't do this, or it was, I don't know how you misconstrued fondling in a car. And I've said before, even sometimes you zig when you should zag, and you end up brushing against somebody that you didn't mean to, and it's embarrassing, and nobody says anything about it. You just kind of move on with your life. But that's hard to explain in the car. Anyway, this is a good time to remind you these are our opinions and not those of anyone not on the show or any respective company for which we may work, own, or otherwise associate ourselves with on a regular or irregular basis. Also, you can find other episodes and relevant stories over at thegeorgiavirtue.com. Jessica, the Mule of the Week you sent to me this morning.
I did send it to you. I don't know where I don't know. It was on one of those compilation places for news, and it was about a show called MILF Manor.
Yeah, it was the story you sent me was from The Guardian. Mm-hmm. So I knew the twist from the commercial. I don't watch reality TV. My idea of reality TV is watching George Poveromo, who has a fishing show that's on Sunday mornings. That's the only reality TV I watch. But here's the twist. All these older women looking for younger men, and then it's revealed, it's their sons, and they have to watch their sons flirt back and forth with the other MILFs, as the show calls them.
And thank God for The Guardian for calling it the queasiest show on television. Because it is a new low.
It really is for mainstream TV. I told you, Howard Stern did an episode of when he was doing Howard Stern TV. And I don't know what the prize was. I mean, the prize had to be something stupid like concert tickets or something like that. I don't care if the prize was $10,000. But it was a mother and son, and the mother answered questions about herself, about typically her sexual history, and the son had to guess the answers, sort of like a really screwed up version of the Newlywed Game. But every question he got wrong, he had to take a piece of clothing off his mom. Mm-mm. And it was, but Howard Stern is a shock jock. That's his label. This is mainstream stuff that's on, what, 8 or 9 o'clock at night? First of all, the term MILF was never supposed to be a badge of honor. It kind of came on after American Pie. As far as it was, like you said before, it's not something you would say to somebody's face. You know, you're a MILF. You know, cougar or hot mom or whatever. But the term MILF was really a guy's term. They said to each other because if you don't know what it stands for, look it up.
It was a term that people said behind a woman's back. It wasn't something that a woman touted.
Yeah, it wasn't derogatory, but it's also locker room talk is the best way to put it. Sophomoric locker room talk that, you know, is the reason it's called locker room talk is it's not fit for being, you know, for being out on the street. It's something that, you know, guys kind of joke around about because we are crass and horrible people. Mm-hmm. But and of course the Guardian's coming at it from being a British standpoint of looking at how crass Americans are. But I just don't know what the entertainment value is in this. Like, what kind of screwed up relationship do you have with your mom that you're going to, like, high-five each other? Let's both go out and get laid.
Yeah, I mean...
And the hot older woman thing has been a thing forever. I mean, I dated older girls most of my life. But, you know, I was 17 and she's, you know, 19, whatever. Or, you know, when I was in my 20s, I briefly dated a woman who was 40. So all that's true, but they're just in a race to the bottom to see how low society could get and them still make money. Of course, I thought it was funny when Courtney Cox did Cougar Town, because she certainly was, at least at the time. Good. That was a pretty good show, too, because they really did the Florida Man thing well. So anyway. So Kemp's budget proposals, $32.5 billion request. Of course, his top priority is what?
Teachers.
Teacher raises. I think
we're going to spend $303 million to give them, the certified personnel, $2,000.
Whatever.
It's never enough.
No, it's never enough. And the job always sucks.
We talked about it last week. I mean, I won't harp on it.
Yeah, not to rehash last week about it. You do this job because you love working with children. You don't do the job because you thought you were going to get rich.
But it's the state portion of the budget is $32.5 billion. And I hate when they say, you know, that Georgia's spending $32.5 billion on the upcoming fiscal year, because that's a lie. Because when you factor in the money that the feds give us and how much it is costing to operate our state, it's really more like, I think it's another, I don't want to speak incorrectly here and it's escaping me, but I want to say it's somewhere between $20 and $25 billion more that the feds funnel down, and we just don't include in the state's budget because it's stuff that we are required to do. And I'm not blaming state lawmakers for that, but it's totally disingenuous to say we do all of this for $32.5 billion. We do not.
You know, it's the same thing that happens on the county level. And I've been in plenty of commissioner meetings where they say it's only going to cost the county X. The rest of the funding is coming. This much is coming from state. This much is coming from federal. You jackass! It's still my money.
Right.
And just because you stole it from this pocket instead of this pocket doesn't mean it's not my money.
The budget has gone up again, though. I mean, I think last year it was in 31 and some change. Before that, it was 29 and some change. It's continuously ticked up. I understand that inflation impacts everything. I'm not discounting that, but we are, I don't know. We'll talk about what they're going to do, what they want to do, but they want to amend because they always amend the fiscal year budget for the previous year before they just spend a little extra money based on additional revenues, which despite even the gas tax suspension, our state's still been collecting more money. So they spend a little bit more based on collecting more than they projected. And then they also plan this budget for FY 2024, the upcoming year, which every year it is. But it's still a sham. It's a sham.
Of course it is. We have $130 million to develop new quick start electric vehicle training facilities that provide customized workforce recruitment to further support the industry.
Obviously, this is in response to Rivian and Hyundai coming to different portions of the state, which ironically, in neither of the communities are these electric vehicle places wanted. I know I can speak for South Georgia when I say we can't accommodate it. We don't have the infrastructure and everything else. And I don't, I'm not saying that the state should just jump in and do it for these small counties, but instead of developing a quick start vehicle training facility and for $130 million, like, why don't you help build out some of the roads and the infrastructures and establish grants for, they're building all these subdivisions and they don't have schools for these people. You want all these people to come work here. You're talking about 10,000 jobs in South Georgia alone. I don't know where you're going to find all those people. But let's build an electric vehicle training facility for workforce recruitment. Like, these companies, first of all, these companies need to recruit on their own.
And I think Rivian is in financial trouble.
Good.
One, I don't think they've rolled a single truck out, have they?
I don't believe so.
This is all theoretical. But as this is going along, it's getting much more expensive for them. The government's already gave Rivian so many concessions. I don't understand. I guess I don't understand, because this could be one of those trade school type things where you're not going to charge the student. They're going to go for free. Mm-hmm. So $130 million is just to build it. Or build them. I think it was it two different facilities they want to do?
Yeah.
That's just to put the building up. Then you have to maintain it. Then you have to pay instructors. You have to recruit instructors, because there are not many people in the state who are experts on how to build electric vehicles. Yeah, it's a hole in which we're going to continue to throw money until forever, for the rest of our lives. And I know we have the Aviation Academy going in Paulding County and all that stuff, but at least that industry actually exists.
Well, and tell me this, okay? Small businesses are having a hard time hiring people. Big businesses are having a hard time finding people. And we're going to specially train people for these types of jobs when there are people there are businesses, small and large, that have been begging and pleading for people to come work for them and to try to find skilled labor. And there's no training for it. Hell, the GBI cannot find any medical examiners because they are not paying enough and people aren't getting trained to become medical examiners. our own state agencies don't have this. So as a result, autopsies are slow and backed up, and the reports take months, and so that slows down cases. And all these trickle down things, and that's just one small, I get not industry, but profession that is affected by a lack of the necessary skill. But the state is going to hone in and create the workers that these special industries need. That kind of crap is why people think that all the people involved are getting kickbacks. That's why, because of dumbassery like this.
It's not unreasonable to think that. GDC, $51 million.
Yeah, so in the amended budget, they're giving them $51 million for emergency maintenance and repairs at existing facilities. I think it's hilarious that they need $51 million for emergency repairs that they didn't budget last year. Like, whatever. And then they're going to do $26 million in bonds to do the same in the upcoming fiscal year. And then the horrific mega prison that they're planning on building for $25 million to meet future space needs for the correction system, which is phenomenal because the federal private prisons are closing because of, well, a lot of reasons, but we've started phasing them out. But there's private prisons that are closing, and at the federal level, not the state level. The state of Georgia is very pro-private prison. But we are buying them as a state. We are buying these facilities from the federal government, from these private companies that had contracts with the federal government. And we're buying their facilities to use for tens of millions of dollars. And I'm assuming that they're going to need upgrades, which is fine. But if we're buying facilities that were partially empty anyway, because they've started letting people out and just the way that the federal government moves inmates around, like we're talking about empty facilities that didn't have any state inmates. Why do we also need to spend $25 million to build a mega prison when we just shuttered Georgia State Prison, which is a massive facility, a max security that had all kinds of deferred maintenance. It's going to be turned into a museum, but it's this sprawling building that they didn't take care of it. Like, I can't comprehend why we allow the buildings to deteriorate and then we're like, oh, we're going to spend all this money. And then a couple years later, they're like, oh man, you know what? It costs more to continue repairing it. So we're going to just build new and then let these buildings sit. And also, stop arresting people for stupid and then you won't need more space.
That I was about to say, if we quit with the stupid laws, that would alleviate a lot of the stress on it. Look, if they're going to build the mega prison, they better damn well build something that is cell phone and not cell phone penetrate. They can't penetrate with cell signal. Make a Faraday cage out of it. Mm-hmm. They say they can't do it now because if you put blockers, the prisoners will just destroy them. Now you can build it into the prison, so we don't get a murder for hire.
That. Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, right. That's so complicated too. I mean, they say that they can't do it because of the FCC and I mean, of all the, like, I think I've talked about on the show before, like, take on that battle. That is absolutely a fight that the state should take on and play the victim and tell the feds to go F themselves. Like, these people, the feds want you to keep everyone in prison who is actually dangerous and let everyone else out. So if you do that and you keep the most dangerous, heinous, awful criminals in prison, then your facilities need to make sure that those dangerous, heinous, awful people are actually kept away from the rest of the world. And our prisons don't do that at all right now.
Well, a Faraday cage is not active cell phone blocking.
Right.
It's passive.
Right.
It's why if you go into a lot of metal buildings, you just won't get signal. So if you do away with the signal, you do away with the ability to privately communicate with people on the outside, which is where you get orders for the contraband and all that stuff. But anyway, prison reform is a very old subject. It's been a subject of conversation for hundreds of years,
and it's going to continue to be because all we do is throw money at emergencies. We don't actually change anything that could have a lasting impact.
Right, we run around with a fire hose and put out the flames here, but do nothing to prevent the next flare up.
Right.
So we're with the Department of Corrections is completely reactionary and not proactive at all. 3.2 million local repayment plan for the state and local law enforcement.
So they're going to, I guess this is more of a pilot program than anything. I'm not sure. But they're going to give up to 800 officers a loan repayment plan in exchange for 5 years of service at $20,000 per officer.
Whatever.
I know they're desperate. I know they're desperate. I just don't know. Honestly, I don't know if that's enough, because I don't think people are not going into law enforcement because they're afraid they can't afford the law enforcement academy. That is the law enforcement academy of all the education we've got going on is not an unreasonable cost, you know?
Right.
So I don't know.
I don't know. It's bad when we get to the smaller numbers like that, and we're talking about millions of dollars, which to you and me would be life changing amount of money, and we're like, that's a small potatoes for a pilot program.
Right.
$243 million in FY24 to provide state employees with cost of living increase of $2,000. Jesus.
I mean, it's not a one-time pay bump. That's what people don't understand. I mean, obviously the employees understand, but like the people who are like, oh, it's okay. No, we have to sustain that. And I understand that costs of everything are going up, but like, I don't know. It's just so, how do people think we're going to sustain these budgets when we hit it with a recession for real? You think it's hard now? People are still spending money.
What did I just say about the GDC?
Right.
They go around trying to put out these little fires and never address the source of ignition. They're not looking at 6 months, a year down the road with what's going to happen when we do get the full force of the recession. They're not looking that far. They're looking at today. Put the fire out today.
I mean, think about this. How many school buses do you think it takes to get kids to school in Paulding County?
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, 50?
I think that's fair. Because they do try to share them among schools and stagger and stuff. I have no idea. But we're going to spend $22,820,000 in bonds to replace 259 school buses.
Keep in mind what a bond is. It's a loan. So
it's for the school districts.
Well, I understand, but it's a loan from people from people who buy municipal bonds. When people move out of the stock market and go to municipal bonds, those interest rates come up, which means the interest rate that investors get paid comes from the municipalities that are paying for that loan. So in which case the individual investor becomes the lender to municipal government. So those are loans that have to be paid back with interest out of the taxpayer dollars. Because government doesn't create anything. Government doesn't generate money. It can only steal it. Sorry, Jess.
No, it's fine. I just $18 million to fund the increased employer share of health insurance costs for the University System of Georgia. I mean, I understand.
And we find out.
What?
I was going to say, and we find out that we have declining enrollment numbers in the University System of Georgia.
For the second year in a row. But yet, despite that, the governor's budget is an increase of funding of $124 million, including $2,000 raises for everyone, faculty and employees. So we've got declining enrollment. You have $124 million more for the budget. And then Sonny Perdue, the chancellor, beloved chancellor, says that the formulas have said that public colleges and universities are going to see student funding cuts, which means that the universities are going to get less money. So where is the money going? So you have a decline in enrollment. You're going to take money away from the universities in terms of their actual, like, the equivalent of what they use for FTE of what a public school is, you know? And then you're going to give them $124 million more. But again, 87.5 of that million of that money is going to the raises, which is why people think that higher education is absolutely asinine. Because I understand that a lot of people work for the state or in the public sector because they do get the benefits of health insurance. But you're talking about an $18 million increase for this university system alone. And then you're talking about $87 million for the $2,000 raises. So you're giving them a cost of living increase of $2,000 a year, plus you're covering whatever they're getting in the increase on health insurance. So you're talking about $100 million just on employees, like because if your health insurance goes up and it costs more, that's a raise.
Well, you know, there's the one thing I do like about this is it includes all faculty members. Because if the janitor doesn't fix, you know, the lights aren't coming on. What I don't like is this idea that college professors and public school teachers are in the same boat. If you're tenured at University of Georgia or Georgia Tech, you're doing fairly well.
You're probably making 3 times what a public school teacher is.
You're doing fairly well. Now I'm not diminishing the fact that it took a long time to get the credentials to be able to teach physics at UGA or cybersecurity somewhere or whatever the hell they do at Georgia Tech and the math that I can't even fathom because it's got too many letters in it. But those professors are separate from professors at Georgia Highland College, which is right down the road from me, which is a 2-year school, and most of those professors aren't rolling in it. It's an oversimplification to say we're going to do a $2,000 increase across the board, because again, the person who is and again, they don't do poorly when you teach at Georgia Highlands. It's not like you're not eating ramen noodles 5 days a week in order to afford to live as a professor at Georgia Highlands. But teaching physics at Georgia Highlands and teaching physics at UGA, there's a huge pay difference. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Sonny's not my favorite person anyway.
No. But
he woke me up one day when I was sleeping. I wasn't very happy with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in New Orleans for Katrina. And we got I'd been on midnight shift, and someone rattled me, got me up, and got dressed, and it was just to go see the governor, who I'd met several times. Like, shook my hand, goes, "How you doing, big guy?" I'm like, "I'm going back to bed." So I always remember that with Sonny Perdue. I'd been asleep for 2 hours, and to wake me up just to shake his hand. Screw him. I'm going back to bed. All right. Wow. Our quick run through. We have bills in the House. Justice for high school football.
Yeah, this one's really gross. Basically, the legislation, which is bipartisan, has leadership support, and it's just gross. The lawmakers have filed this bill to make sure that high schools that receive state funding are barred from participating in interscholastic sporting events that don't, quote, utilize instant replay for high school football championship games. Because there was a huge to-do about the championship game for GHSA a couple months ago. They weren't able to look at the instant replay, and they say that it would have, the officials weren't able to, and then of course like analytics after showed that the results would have been different and people were robbed of a championship and blah blah blah. Not the proper role of government at all. Like no matter where you cut it.
Beyond that, it's not the role of government should have nothing to do with high school athletics. High school athletics should be completely funded by either the boosters or whatever. Have nothing to do with it. Look, I played high school football. I think playing team sports is a wonderful education for young men. Certainly, way to funnel that aggression and testosterone that young men have and haven't learned to control quite yet, and it's a controlled release for them. I think there's huge benefits to participating in sports. I also don't think it's the taxpayer's obligation to fund it. Instant replay. All right, look. Human error is part of sports. Now, we've mitigated it in the NFL with instant replay, somewhat in college. But even baseball, which does have instant replay for some things, recognizes that human error is part of it. You can't use instant replay for balls and strikes in baseball because human error is part of the game. You're going to add to the expense of having to have instant replay because the money that goes into college athletics and the money that goes in obviously into professional sports, is humongous. The ability to replay on the field from multiple camera angles in a high school game, suck it up. Sometimes the ball doesn't bounce your way. If they have instant replay, fine, okay, great. But yeah, it's not the role of government. I got called for late hits that if you had to be able to look at instant replay, see that it wasn't late or whatever. But it's just man, it's high school. Well, all right. Anyway, Jess, sorry.
We're like way over too. So
yeah.
We can
save
these for next week. But
no, the only one I do want to say is the defining anti-Semitism. Mm-hmm. Webster already did it for us.
It's a page long.
Well, all bills should be a page long.
No, the entire definition is a page long.
Oh yeah, first of all, why is it incumbent upon a state to define a word? We all know what it is. It is repugnant, but I don't know if this is just if we're trying to get Israeli business and kissing butt or what. I have no idea what that comes down to. But don't worry, there are plenty of more absurd bills we'll get to in the coming weeks. Jessica, your closing thought.
So this past week we learned that George McMichael, the father of the McMichael name and that we heard in the Ahmaud Arbery murder case, is going to serve his life out in prison because they were sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. He's going to serve it out in Augusta State Medical Prison. He was at Jackson. He's been at Jackson since they were transferred there last summer, I guess. And people are outraged. And one, the media is like, we're learning to find out more. Okay, well, the media is not going to find out more. As somebody who has covered the Department of Corrections intensely, they're not going to tell you because it's called HIPAA. But also, unless the McMichaels release it, like, that's not going to happen. Second, I don't really know what people expected. The guy is 66 years old. And he was in general population, which is what everybody wanted. But, like, if that was a stressful situation, or if he was injured, or if something happened that caused his health to decline because, I don't know, he's in prison and his quality of life has declined. I'm not saying that it shouldn't have, but it did. These things happen, and we shouldn't be surprised that the 66-year-old man is being moved to a facility for people who are older, sicker, have health problems and complications and things like that. And I think it's just so gross. I guess this could have been the Mule of the Week, but it's really just a little bit more of a pontification than anything. Like, it's so gross that the same people who are constantly talking about how we need prison reform and justice reform and we should treat people like humans, like in cases like this, they totally abandon their principles and they're like, I don't care. Like, I hope whatever happens to them happens to them. And I know we all have cases that get to us and make us feel that way. But at the end of the day, like, it's something we say to people that we're close to, not things that, like, you go out and one day you're professing that, you know, conditions should be better, and the next day you're telling everyone that these people should rot and burn and be bludgeoned to death and everything else. Also, the whole thing that, like, most of us on all sides, the tough on crime, the reform side, whatever side it is, what everyone has been saying is that GDC's responsibility is to keep them inside and to keep them alive. That is their only responsibility. So if they're keeping him inside and now they're working to keep him alive, they're doing their job. So stop being a dumbass and acting like this is some egregious thing that's happening because George McMichael was moved from diagnostic prison to the freaking medical prison. I assure you, it might be a little bit cozier because the bed might go up and down with a remote, but it's not a great place to be. It's still prison, which is what they all wanted.
He will never again breathe air that's not striped.
He will die alone.
He will die alone in prison. Hey, look, I'm not taking up for the guy.
Of course not. But what is the difference of dying alone in a cell in Jackson, Georgia, and dying in a cell alone that has a bed with a remote that goes up and down because it's a hospital bed in Augusta?
It makes no difference to society because he's been removed from it. Where he is and why is nobody's business. It could be he's only in his 60s. Could be heart condition. Could be that he took a shiv. We don't know.
And we will not know.
And it's not our business. If it was a crime, it is our business. If there was a crime committed, I should say that the crime itself is our business. You know, his medical prognosis is not.
Yeah, that's the other thing. GDC covers up violence and crime in prison. So if it was that, I think we would know by now. Because those inmates.
We'd want to
know. The fact that it's not is it's a medical condition. So it's none of our business. That's just it.
Well, I'm going to bounce off of yours. I was between two things. Bounce off of yours. Ron Jeremy is not going to go to court. He has been judged mentally incompetent to stand trial for multiple sexual assaults.
Really?
So, in our tradition of making sure we bring up porn every show, Ron Jeremy will not have to face his accusers. He's going to be transferred to a mental health facility and live out his days there. The prosecution has asked that periodical checkups are made to see if he's faking it. But they're saying his cognitive decline is so bad at this point that he's not competent to stand trial. Interesting, anyway.
Great.
So for Eric Cumby, our editor who turns awful audio into something that you can listen to, for Jessica Szilagyi, I'm Dave Roberts. Have a great week.
I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon. catch me howling at the moon.